Okay, so let's have a look at actually building the character rig. And so if I Shift C, and that just relocates our 3D cursor to the 0 origin, Shift A, and add an armature, single bone. Okay, so if I move that up to the center, and in the side view we can see that that bone is now obscured by the actual mesh. So we go in and we change our setting to X-ray, and that means that we can see our bone regardless of where we look through the character. And now to start working on that, I'll tab into edit mode, and what I'm going to do now is rotate that bone 180 degrees. That bone will become our pelvis. So if I move it like so, and then I'm going to duplicate that bone, Shift D and Z, escape and undo, sorry, Shift D, Z, and move that upwards and rotate 180. And this will create our upper torso. So the body will bend at this point here. I was going to make sure I didn't duplicate that. It always pays to be sure that we haven't duplicated bones when we don't want to. In order to make the chest area here, I can subdivide and then subdivide again. Okay, now it pays to name our bones. I'm not going to name every bone in this particular tutorial because it will be time consuming. We want to move through this nice and quick. But for the sake of what we're doing here, we can name this bone becomes pelvis, spine 01, spine 02, and we can call this chest. Okay. Now we need to work this in the front view. So my character is sitting in the x-axis. The x-axis is going left to right. There's a function we can use called the x-axis mirror. So what I need to do is first of all, extrude, and extrude a bone out like that. Now I need to be careful with the naming conventions. I can either call this right and left, or left and right. Right being screen right, or left being his left shoulder. But when I name this, I'm going to call this shoulder.r for screen right, and shoulder.l for screen left. Okay, now it doesn't matter how we work that, but I'm looking at it, so that's my left and that's my right as a viewer, so I'm going to work that way. And if I check this button over here, x-axis mirror, that will now allow me to move one bone and the bone on the opposite side. Now it will only work in the front view, and it will only work if we use the .r and .l naming convention. And so now if I extrude, extrude, and extrude, it makes our life nice and easy. Now I'm just going to look in the top view and move some of these bones back. I'm making sure that these bones are, and in the side view, making sure that these bones are fitting down through the mesh. We're not going to do fingers and thumbs, we're just going to have the hands controlled by one bone. As I'm sure you can appreciate, that's quite complex rigging. Like that. And now I can go back to the middle here, extrude Z, and in the side view that becomes our neck, and extrude, and that becomes our skull. And so I'll name those as we move through. Neck and skull. And so we've rigged the top part of our character. Well, we haven't rigged it, but we've created the bones. So now to do the legs, I'm going to Shift D and select that bone and move it to the right. And I'll call that thigh.r. Shift D X to duplicate it to the opposite side, and I'll rename it thigh.l. That means that now the x-axis mirror allows me to work nice and efficiently. Remembering we're in 3 dimensions, so we want to ensure that we're looking at things in the side view as well as the front view. Extrude and bring that down to the ankle. And again, in the side view, let's drag that back so it sits right in the ankle there. Now the feet might look a bit strange, but once it animates and we've rigged it properly, you'll understand better how it works. But we'll just extrude and extrude. So this is where our foot can bend. And we can see, looking at that what we've done on one side is happening on the other. So the x-axis mirror is a wonderful tool. It does make things a lot quicker for us. Okay. So there's our rig. Now what we need to do is we need to bind these, not bind them together, but we need to make sure that all of these are parent and child, that they work together. So what I'm going to do first of all is just tab into object mode, and I'm going to separate my mesh and my rig to separate layers. And we can see layers down here, okay? Everything's on a layer there as it's selected. I want to move my rig down to a layer below here. And the easy way to do that is to select the object, so select the rig, and M to move, and I can just move that onto a separate layer. And this allows me to look at objects without having to worry about hide. And I can hold the shift key, and the shift key will show both. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to work without the mesh for a moment. I'm going to tab back into edit mode and then control tab into pose mode. And now if I rotate, I can see that by rotating those legs, they're working fine. But I want to be able to rotate the entire figure from this point here, and if I do that, no other bones are being affected. So back into edit mode, I want to make this apparent to the upper section and to both legs. And so what I'll do is one at a time, I will select that bone and control P, and we have two choices, connected or offset. If I hit connected, it makes our bones pop like that, which we don't want. So I'll undo that and control P, keep offset. And what that does is it puts this little dotted line in that shows there's a relationship between this bone and that bone. Same here. And so we always select the child first and the parent last, same as when we're binding, whenever we're creating a parent-child relationship, we select the child, then the parent, control P, and keep offset. And because we've got x-axis mirror on, it's done that for both legs. Now, if I go to pose mode, and I rotate that bone in the middle, everything works with it. Okay, so now to bind it to our character, so we select the mesh, then we select the rig, control P, and if you recall we select with automatic weights. And so now if I select my armature and control tab into pose mode, if I rotate this, I can now pose my character. Okay. So in the next video, we're going to take that a step further, and we're going to add inverse kinematics constraints to the legs and some additional bones that will make animating this character a lot better. Okay, so practice that. Don't forget to ask for help if you're having any troubles in class, and we'll look forward to seeing how your rigged characters turn out.